Hello and welcome to Software Testing from Scratch, brought to you by Eduonix. My name is Richard. This is Chapter 6, Test Automation. So things we're going to be covering in this chapter are things to consider, why should we automate tests, a use case approach, and some testing tools. So things to consider. A commitment to development. Although automation is automatic, it does need development and setting up initially, which can be very time consuming, especially if there's a learning curve around learning to use the application itself as well. It does save time in the long run, but this is definitely something to consider. You have the classic loop here: we don't automate because we don't have time, because we don't automate because we don't have time. It's a never-ending loop, and automation does require some investment. It will pay off in the long run, but I think it's just getting the automation in there in the first place is the difficulty, which of course brings us on to cost. A dedicated budget has to be allocated to automation, which will include costs related to the testing tool, development itself, deployment, resource and training. In addition to the maintenance costs for automation tests and tools must be included as well. Chances are if you buy an automation tool, you'll get a license with it. It'll probably only be for about 12 months, but you'll get a license. Then after that 12 months, they'll probably stop supporting it. You'll stop getting updates unless you pay them some more. This is how the cost can just increase exponentially from the initial, say £1,000 for a tool. Year 2 could be 800. Year 3 could also be 800. QA resource. Dedicated resource is required. A dedicated team for effective testing of automation. A non-dedicated team will execute the test automation with their own limitations, which will lead to focus of activities on a specific part of a project, such as a subsystem, without concern for reuse in the future. That would just be setting up a little test to test what you need to test now, just to get it done a bit quicker without thinking of repeat tests in the future. That's not the way you want to automate things. Less sharing of tools and information between project teams. Chances are if you've set up this fantastic test automation tool, you're not going to want anybody else to go anywhere near it in case they do something to your tests. Automated tests that are poorly maintained, reused and integrated due to the lack of efficient collaboration and coordination among different teams. Automated tests don't just cover what the QA team would have in their test cases. Automated tests are fantastic for developers as well. Expectations. What are the main expectations of automation? It's going to be accuracy, it's going to be timely execution of tests, and better scheduling as well. If you can accurately say that you can run 10 tests in 10 minutes and get the results within a couple of minutes after that, it's going to be fantastic for your boss or your manager to be able to say, yes, we can definitely test this bit of software on this day, even without having any kind of human interaction. A lot of these test automated systems can just run on a loop, such as doing nightly tests. If there's a build at 5 o'clock that incorporates everything people have done during the day, a nightly test will highlight any issues and give it a good kind of 12 hours, or maybe even longer, running time between people going home in the evening and coming into work again. But also, as far as realistic expectations go, there are a few other things you should probably consider as well. It's not going to be the be-all and end-all of your testing, but achieving 100% automatic tests is completely unreachable. Not every test can be automated. The benefits of automation is only really relevant after several cycles of the execution. If you just run the test once, it's not going to be beneficial because you probably could have done it quicker manually. It would have taken you so much time to set up the tool in the first place. There's not going to be any immediate payback either. As I've said, the cost benefits are reaped over time rather than individual tests. So the longer you use this tool for, the more cost effective it then becomes. A ramp-up time will be required for tool selection and framework creation as well, as I've already said. Record and playback helps minimally in test automation. Long gone are the days when you can record a macro and it'll go and click here, there and everywhere for you, just like Selenium. You can't really do that for too much anyway. There's no available tool in the market that supports all systems as well. If you want to test databases with one tool, it's not going to be able to test your user interface for your mobile devices. You're going to need another tool for that, which is going to be costly. Not all testers can write scripts either, but of course not all test automation tools require scripts. Availability of specialized resource, such as testers, would be required in those situations anyway. So why do we automate things? Well, quite simply, some people don't, but the people that do, they automate because it saves time and money. Software tests have to be repeated often during development life cycles to ensure good quality. Chances are it'll be tested less if you didn't have automation software in there. Every time source code is modified, software should be tested repeatedly. For each release of the software, it may be tested on all supported operating systems and hardware configurations as well. Manually repeating these tests is costly and very time consuming. People cut corners to avoid doing that, which causes even more problems. Once created, automated tests can be run over and over again at no additional cost, and are much faster than manual tests as well. You just take one click of a button, the system does it for you. Automated software testing can reduce the time to run repetitive tests from days to hours, maybe even minutes. A time saving that translates directly into cost saving as well, so hopefully an automated test system would pay for itself within time. It would improve accuracy. Precise rerunning of tests is ensured with automation. Even the best testers make mistakes. Automation will guarantee the same steps are rerun time after time after time. I can think of multiple times in my past where I have run a particular test case and passed it, and then somebody's come back to me and said, hey, that doesn't work. I go back and it didn't work, and then I run it again and it did work. At least with automation, if you did get those kind of results, you would be able to repeat it, and hopefully it will be logged in the system as well. Increase of test coverage. Automated software testing will definitely increase the depth and scope of tests to improve the software quality. Lengthy tests are often avoided during manual testing because people like to cut corners, as I've said. Chances are that if you've got 100 tests, there's 5 really big ones, there'll be 95 done, and then if there's time at the end, the 5 lengthy ones will be done. It's just down to human laziness. They can even be run on multiple computers with different configurations. Automated software testing can look inside the application itself and see the memory contents, data tables, file contents, and internal program states as well, to determine if the product is behaving exactly as expected. It assists developers. Developers should have access to this as well. If they are going to perform unit tests, or even system tests depending on what they're doing, on their individual bits of code, it would be fantastic if they could test it and discover it doesn't work before they hand it over to QA, because that always happens. QA would get an Alpha 1 release, it would be listed as being tested by developers, and then lo and behold, when it comes to using it, it fails at the first hurdle because there hasn't been any testing done by a developer. If they could do it with one-click automation, I'm sure it wouldn't happen. It makes a happier team. It cuts down on repetitive tests. It cuts down on people having to point and click 15-20 times on one particular test and having to repeat it 10 times because you have to do 10 test runs. It just generally lifts the morale as well. People spend more time playing is probably the wrong word, using the automated testing tool to get long-term benefits from it, rather than just knuckling down and getting things done. That's definitely a good thing. This is a use case approach to automated testing. So say you're testing a backup job, you could create an automated test that would log into a system, run a backup job, remove the job older than X amount of days, probably 30 days, just to make sure you've got enough room. Then it would do an offsite backup, it would select external media, it would copy the backup to the media, and then log out the system again. It would probably do some its own logging through that process as well, just to give you some kind of output at the end. And then use case number 2 would be system engineer migrates virtual machine to a secondary node. They'd log into the virtual platform, such as VMware or XenCenter. They'd select the VM to move. They'd select the node to move it to. They'd move the VM. They'd log into the VM, perform a whole host of checks to make sure it's working okay, ABC. They'd log out of the virtual machine and log out of the virtual platform. So do you remember before when we talked about stories to help tests work more effectively? You're definitely onto a winner if you can build automated test cases around these kind of scenarios. It would be a lot more accurate to use an automated testing tool on these kind of scenarios as well. Tools. Which tools to use? So if we have a look at this, it's a fantastic website resource here that displays many different kinds of testing tools. It also gives you a bit of background on the tools as well. It will give information such as motivation to start test automation, what kind of preconditions you have, team skills, test cases. A lot of people think that you need developers to have an automated testing tool. You don't. You don't even need a specialized automated test engineer. There's definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve with these bits of software, but anybody can pick it up if they've got enough time to do it. So the tool pre-selection as well. These guys will recommend the 3 best fitting tools and frameworks, but after that you can manually choose which tools would best suit your project. I'm not going to read this list out, there's far too many. There's probably a few in there that you recognise, like Eclipse, TPTP, which other ones do we know here? JPerf, JTest, that kind of thing. Everybody knows them, but at least from a testing perspective anyway. So this website is a fantastic resource. It also gives you evaluation criteria as well as test automation methodology, capturing any kind of scripting languages as well. Test automation isn't necessarily anything to do with coding, although it can have coding in there. And of course, things like data-driven testing, keyword-driven testing, reporting, documentation, that kind of thing. Fantastic website, whichtestingtool.com/tool-evaluation.